My younger sister got pregnant out of wedlock and disappeared after giving birth to a boy in a back alley clinic. The doctor used the address she left behind to find my family and dumped the baby on me. My parents got on their knees and begged me to adopt him. Just like that, I, a single woman, began the arduous task of raising a child alone. Years later, just as I had finally raised him, my sister returned. On her arm was a wealthy businessman, a gaudy gold chain gleaming around his neck. She clutched my son and sobbed, telling him I was a jealous monster who had stolen him at birth, tearing their family apart. My son, my pride and joy, renounced me on the spot and ran into her arms. My parents threw me out of the house. The neighbors' gossip and condemnation became my personal hell. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my sister gave birth. The pounding on my door at dawn jolted me awake in a cold sweat. This was it. In my last life, this was the exact moment the clinic doctor had hammered on our door, waking the entire neighborhood. He had handed me the baby in front of everyone, scolding me for being an irresponsible mother. Only later did I learn the baby was my sister's. My parents had begged me to keep him since I had no plans to marry anyway. I agreed, a choice I came to regret with every fiber of my being. Hearing that sound again, a jolt of electricity shot through me. I scrambled out of bed and yanked the door open to see the same familiar face. Lena, the doctor began, his voice dripping with condescension. You can't just have a baby and abandon it. That's illegal. The neighbors were already awake, craning their heads out of their doorways to watch the drama unfold. I stared at him for a single silent second. Then I ripped off my slipper and brought it down on his face with all my strength. You goddamn vulture! I screamed, hitting him again and again. How dare you show up at my door with this scam? I don't even have a boyfriend, let alone a baby. Have you ever seen a woman who just gave birth hit this hard? I gestured wildly at my own body. Do I look like I just had a baby? My furious assault left the doctor stunned and speechless. Mrs. Gable from across the hall was the first to speak. She's right. Lena goes to work every single day. I've never once seen her with a baby bump. Yeah, you must have the wrong person. Wait, I recognize him. Isn't that the doctor from that sketchy clinic down the street? I planted my hands on my hips, slipper still raised. You sleazy old quack. You run a back alley clinic and now you're trying to pin a baby on me. That's it, I'm calling the cops. The word cops made him panic. I won't press charges for the assault. I grabbed a fistful of his hair, yanking his head back. Oh, you won't press charges? Too bad, because I'm not letting you run away. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Hello, 911. I'd like to report a case of infant trafficking. Don't you dare say that. He shrieked. You'd better have a good story for the police, I snarled, or I swear to God I'll burn your little clinic to the ground. Fate had given me a second chance, and I was unleashing every ounce of frustration and injustice from my past life. When the police arrived, they found a bizarre scene, a doctor holding a swaddled newborn, his face bruised and swollen, and me in my pajamas wielding a slipper like a weapon. The neighbors had all gathered, buzzing with speculation. The officers looked from the baby, so fresh its umbilical cord was still clamped, to the doctor. Right, what's going on here? Start talking. She's the one, he sputtered. The patient left this address and name. He pulled a medical file from his pocket. An officer took it. The address was indeed mine, and the name on the file was Lena Scott. I crossed my arms. I have no idea what you're talking about. Someone obviously used my name to have a baby and is now trying to make me pay for it. Just as I finished speaking, my parents, who had been hiding inside, finally emerged. Lena, my mother began, her voice wheedling. Since you're not planning on getting married anyway, why don't you just adopt him? Are you serious, Mom? I'm not just going to randomly adopt a child who appeared out of nowhere. We have no idea who his parents are. What if they're drug addicts? That stuff is genetic. You want me to raise some ungrateful little monster? My parents were stunned into silence. The doctor's face twisted with fury. He shoved the baby into my arms. This is your family's problem. I'm done. You can tell Stella she can raise her own damn kid. If I'd known you people were this unreasonable, I never would have come. A collective gasp went through the crowd. The secret was out. The baby belonged to my sister. Stella, you liar, I shouted, shoving the baby right back at him. First you say he's mine, now you say he belongs to Stella. Where's your proof? You have none. You just want to dump this baby on us. Officer, I'm telling you, this man is trafficking infants. The crowd outside grew louder, voices overlapping in waves of disbelief. The morning air was thick with whispers and suspicion, all of it pressing down on me like a heavy weight. But this time, unlike in my last life, I was not the victim. I was the one holding the cards. The officer holding the file flipped through the pages, frowning. The patient record says Lena Scott. But this lady, he nodded toward me, doesn't look like someone who just gave birth. Are you absolutely sure, doctor? The man's face flushed red beneath the swelling left by my slipper. He shifted his weight nervously, darting his eyes between me, the neighbors, and the officers. I was just following the protocol. The mother gave this address. That's all. The child was born yesterday. I have to place him with a responsible party. And that would be the mother herself, not some stranger, I snapped. So unless you can produce her right now, this entire situation smells like a scam. Mrs. Gable, bless her sharp tongue, piped up again. My grandson was born in a real hospital, not one of those shady clinics. The nurse stayed for hours explaining everything. But you? You come knocking with a baby in the middle of the night like some kind of delivery boy. Who does that? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the neighbors. The doctor's forehead glistened with sweat. My father finally spoke, his voice hesitant. Maybe Stella. Maybe she made a mistake. We should just help. Family should stick together. Dad. I cut him off, every nerve in my body alight with rage. Family? Where was Stella when she snuck off and used my name to cover her tracks? Where was she when she abandoned this baby at a clinic with no conscience? And you, both of you, would have me clean up her mess again, just like before. Not this time. I refuse. The officers exchanged glances. One of them took the baby from the doctor's arms, cradling the newborn with surprising gentleness. We'll take the child to Child Protective Services until the mother can be located. Sir, he turned to the doctor, you'll need to come with us for questioning. This looks like a potential case of identity fraud and neglect. No. The doctor wailed. This isn't my fault. It was Stella Scott. She signed the papers herself. She gave this address. I was only. Save it for the station, the officer barked. They cuffed him right there in the hallway. The crowd erupted with gasps and low murmurs. The baby let out a thin, wailing cry, tiny fists waving in the air. For a brief, aching moment, my chest tightened. I had raised him once. I had fed him, clothed him, stayed awake through nights of fever, celebrated his first steps, and held him when he cried. In my last life, I had poured every ounce of love into him only to have it twisted and spat back into my face. Now, here he was again, only a day old, innocent and helpless. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to look away. This was no longer my burden. The officers carried the doctor and the infant down the stairs, leaving behind a hushed silence. My neighbors turned to me, their faces a mix of sympathy and curiosity. For once, I was not the fool. I lifted my chin. You all saw what happened. Someone tried to use me as a scapegoat. Let this be a warning, next time it could be any of you. Mrs. Gable gave me a firm nod, approval shining in her eyes. For the first time in years, I felt the faintest taste of vindication. When the police car pulled away, my parents dragged me back inside. My mother shut the door with trembling hands. Lena, why did you say all that? Why make such a scene? Do you know how much trouble you've caused? I laughed bitterly. Me? I caused trouble? Stella is the one who ran off and dumped her baby on us. And you were perfectly willing to let me shoulder it again, weren't you? Just like last time. My father lowered his eyes. He's blood. Family must stay together. Family? The word felt poisonous on my tongue. Where was that family loyalty when you begged me to raise him alone? Where was it when Stella waltzed back years later and tore him from my arms while you all cheered her on? You call that family? No, you call it convenience. You used me because I was single, because I had no one to defend me. But I won't live that life again. My mother's face hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. Do you think anyone will believe you? Do you think people will side with you when Stella comes back with her story? You're selfish, Lena. You've always been selfish. I stared at her, realization dawning like ice spreading through my veins. Nothing had changed. They had not learned. In this life, just like the last, my parents would never protect me. Fine. Let them think me selfish. This time, I would live for myself. Over the next few days, the neighborhood buzzed with the scandal. Word spread fast about the shady doctor, the baby, and the name Stella Scott. My sister's reputation, once sparkling with false charm, began to tarnish. People whispered that she had gotten pregnant in secret, that she had abandoned her own child, that she had framed me. I did not deny it. In fact, when anyone asked, I spoke plainly. Yes, the doctor himself admitted it in front of the police. It was Stella. The seed was planted. In my last life, gossip had been my executioner. Now it would be my shield. Days stretched into weeks. My sister had not yet returned, but I knew she would. She always did, gliding back with fake tears and designer clothes, expecting forgiveness and worship. But this time, she would return to a battlefield already poisoned against her. Meanwhile, I began to plan. If fate had given me another chance, I would not waste it. I would build a life that could not be stolen from me. A career, savings, allies, independence. I would not chain my future to a child who would one day spit in my face. Still, some nights I lay awake, haunted by memories of his laughter, of his tiny hand clutching mine, of the way he used to call me Mom. My heart ached, but I reminded myself of the ending. He had chosen Stella, not me. He had renounced me without hesitation. Love, I learned too late, could not conquer betrayal. This time, I would conquer first. One morning, I walked into the office where I worked as an assistant and felt the weight of my new life settling around me. My colleagues greeted me as always, unaware that I carried the memories of another lifetime. I smiled politely, already thinking several steps ahead. In my last life, I had been meek, hardworking, invisible. I had kept my head down, pouring myself into my son and ignoring opportunities. When Stella returned with her rich husband, I had been powerless, penniless, defenseless. Not anymore. Now I would rise. And when Stella finally came back, as I knew she would, I would be ready. The weeks turned into months, and the day finally arrived. I returned home late from work one evening to find a sleek black car parked outside the building. Its polished chrome gleamed beneath the streetlights, and beside it stood a man in an expensive suit with a heavy gold chain glinting at his throat. My stomach twisted with recognition. On his arm was Stella. She was draped in silk, her face painted with false innocence, crocodile tears already pooling in her eyes. And in her other arm, God help me, was the same child. My son from another life. The sight of him nearly knocked the air from my lungs. He was only a few months old now, chubby cheeks flushed from the evening air. His tiny eyes blinked up at me, unknowing, unscarred by betrayal. Lena, Stella cried dramatically, rushing toward me. How could you abandon your own flesh and blood? This child needs his mother. The neighbors, always hungry for spectacle, began to gather. Their eyes darted between us, whispers already buzzing like hornets. But this time, I did not falter. I raised my chin and looked her dead in the eye. My child? That's funny, Stella. Because everyone here already knows the truth. That baby is yours. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. And just like that, the war began. The streetlight threw a thin silver bar across the hood of the black car. Stella leaned into it like a model at a showroom, eyes shining with practiced grief. The man beside her adjusted the gold chain at his throat and watched me the way a buyer inspects a product. In her arms, the baby shifted and made a small sound, a kitten noise that rolled straight through my rib cage. Neighbors drifted out of doorways, slippers shuffling, arms folded across robes. Someone whispered that this was the rich man from the new tower by the river. Someone else said he owned a nightclub. Someone said both. Heads turned. Phones lifted. I let them record. In my last life, secrecy had been my enemy. This time, the light was my witness. Lena, Stella said, drawing my name out like a ribbon. At last. You and I need to talk about what you did. I kept my hands at my sides and did not step forward. Not even 1 inch. The baby was the gravity in her pose, the lure she expected to pull me off balance. Not this time. What I did was call the police when a clinic tried to force a stranger's child on me, I said. You might remember that. Everyone here does. Her lashes fluttered. The baby, she said louder, so the crowd could hear, was only taken to the station because you attacked the doctor. You made a scene and the officers were confused. There was a mistake with the file. But everything is cleared up now. My child is home with his family. The man in the suit laid a hand on her back with careful pressure, like he was posing her for a photograph. "We have him now," he said to me. He smiled without showing teeth. "That is all that matters. Names have power." I wanted his. So I glanced at the gold chain, at the watch face, at the shoes, built the guess, and asked as if I already knew. "Mr. Cole, right?" The faintest pause. Then the smile widened. "Damien Cole," he said. "Yes. And you are Lena Scott, the woman who tried to abandon her own sister's baby." A few neighbors hissed. A few gasped. Mrs. Gable cut through them all with a snort. "We saw the police take the doctor away in cuffs," she said. "We also saw the file with Lena's name on it. And we heard him say the mother was Stella. So unless the baby changed mothers on the way to the station, you are both full of hot air?" Laughter scattered the tension. Stella flinched. Mr. Cole's eyes slid to the phones. He recalculated, then softened his voice. "No one wants trouble," he said. "We only want what is best for the child. My wife has been ill. She was not herself. She made mistakes. We are here to make amends. To family." Wife. The word hung there. Stella did not correct him. A ripple moved through the crowd. You could feel the math being done in a dozen heads. If they were married, then the baby would become the heir of a man with a car like that. If they were not, then wife was cover. In either case, the show was deliberate. I kept my face plain. "If you want what is best for the child," I said, "then you should have cooperated with Child Protective Services instead of staging a performance on my doorstep. You want amends, fine. Start by telling the truth. Ask the clinic to release the intake logs. Ask the officers for their report. And if you ever use my name on any form again, I will file for a protective order and I will win." Stella's lower lip trembled. "How can you be so cruel?" she asked. "Mother said you have always resented me, but this is monstrous. He is a baby." "Cruel is abandoning a newborn and sending him to my door," I said. "Cruel is using my life as a trash can for your choices. I will not take him. Not now, not ever. Raise your son. Or do not. But keep my name out of it." The word ever rang, and I let it. The old Lena would have left a crack in the door for hope. The new Lena left none. Mr. Cole took one small step closer, palms open. "We do not want to involve the state," he said in a low voice meant for me and for every microphone within 10 feet. "That would be a tragedy for such a small child. Families should solve family problems. If you would sign a simple affidavit stating that you have no claim and no interest, we can all move on. In return, I can make sure your parents are taken care of. A better apartment. A stipend. No more gossip. Peace." There it was at last. The purchase price. In my other life I would have heard the word peace and melted. This time I measured the offer like a carpenter measures a piece of rock. "You want me to sign away something I do not have," I said. "You would prefer to obtain that paper in case anyone ever asks how this baby went from a back alley clinic to a penthouse. No, Mr. Cole. If you want a document, talk to my lawyer." "Lawyer," Stella repeated and laughed a little too brightly. "Since when do you have a lawyer?" "Since the day you used my name to commit fraud," I said. "And I suggest you get one too. A real one." I turned my back on them and went inside. The door clicked shut on a burst of whispers. My mother was waiting in the hallway, hands clenched in her cardigan. "You humiliated your sister," she hissed. "You just had to. Why can you not be kind? You know how sensitive she has been. Mr. Cole is trying to help." "Sensitive," I said. "Is that the word for it now? We are not hosting her circus in my life again. Not ever. If you do not help," my father said from the kitchen, "you are not welcome here." He did not meet my eyes. "So be it," I said, and went to my room. I locked the door. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and let the tremor run through me. My hands shook. Not from fear. From the weight of the old timeline pressing against this new one like a ghost trying to force its way through a door. In the past, this night had been the beginning of years of sacrifice. Bottles. Cribs. Night fevers. All of it. In the past, I had opened my arms and called it love. In the past, I had mistaken love for a task. I breathed until my pulse slowed. Then I took out my notebook and wrote a list. On the paper it looked cold. In my chest it felt like mercy. Call Attorney Park in the morning. Request copy of police incident report. Request CPS intake number and name of assigned caseworker. Draft letter to clinic requesting preservation of records and security footage. Install door camera. Start savings envelope labeled emergency. Update resume. Ask for more hours. Ask for training stipend. Ask for performance review date. Document all contact with Stella and Damien. Do not touch the baby. Do not be alone with them. Record everything. I slept with a notebook under my pillow. The next day I called Attorney Park during her lunch hour. She remembered my name from the short consult I had made the week of the clinic incident. I told her Stella had reappeared with a man who called himself Damien Cole and with a baby. I told her he had asked me to sign an affidavit stating I had no claim. I told her I wanted a letter on record and a plan. 2 things, she said. First, do not sign anything. You already understand that. Second, you need to get ahead of the narrative. People like Mr. Cole invest in appearance. If he thinks you are a threat to it, he will try to discredit you. We will send a notice to the clinic and to Mr. Cole's office demanding preservation of all records related to the birth. We will also notify CPS that you are a victim of identity fraud connected to the case. That way, if anything goes sideways, they will already see you as a witness, not a suspect. What about my parents? I asked. They will say whatever Stella wants. Attorney Park was quiet a beat. Then she said what I already knew. You cannot control them. Protect yourself. And document. We filed the letters that afternoon. It felt like placing sandbags before a storm. 3 days later I came home to find a gift bag on my doormat. The tissue paper was baby blue. Inside were formula receipts with my name printed on the store account and a note in round, childish letters. Thank you for helping with the baby. Do not be so stubborn. My door camera caught the drop-off. Stella's face was tilted just enough to be pretty on screen. She knew exactly what she was doing. If she put me near milk and diapers in the public mind, one day she could say I had always been involved. That I had contributed. That I had mothered. I forwarded the clip to Attorney Park and to Mrs. Gable for sport. Then I placed the receipts in a plastic sleeve and labeled it evidence, staging. The next week, Stella hosted a baby shower in our parents' apartment. She posted a photo with pink balloons and glitter letters that spelled out "Welcome Home" on the wall, the baby on her hip and the gold chain flashing at her shoulder. My mother stood beside her, glowing. The caption read, "My sister could not be here but we forgive her. Family always forgives." The comments were a bonfire. I did not reply. I washed dishes. I called the CPS number and asked for the caseworker on the file. A woman answered on the second ring and introduced herself as Ms. Dorsey. Her voice had the steady tempo of someone who had navigated too many storms and learned to keep her keel straight. "You are listed as the reporting party for the identity issue," she said when she found the file. "We released the infant to the mother after she provided matching DNA. We also conducted a home visit. The living conditions were satisfactory." Satisfactory, I repeated. Does that include a man who may or may not be her spouse, who offers money to silence a witness? Silence took a long breath at the other end of the line. "Mom, if you have documentation, please submit it." I sent the video of Damien's offer. I sent the recorded street conversation. I sent the gift bag clip. Ms. Dorsey acknowledged receipt and said the words that mattered. "We will place this in the file." Meanwhile, at work, I asked for more responsibility. My manager blinked as if he had not expected any initiative to come from the quiet woman in the third cubicle. I presented a short proposal I had written the night before: how to streamline intake, how to triage calls, how to reduce errors. He skimmed it, then looked up, surprised. "You wrote this," he said. "Yes," I said. "We tried something similar last year. We did not have the staff to handle it." "I can handle it," I said. "Give me 3 weeks. If metrics do not improve, we go back." He gave me 2 weeks. In 10 days the queue time dropped by a third and the error rate fell by half. He asked how I had done it. I had done it by caring about something I could control. On Friday he gave me a small raise and a new title with the word lead in it. It was not much. It was everything. I opened a new account at a credit union and labeled it Clean Exit. I let the number grow the way one lets bread rise, with patience and faith. Stella noticed. Of course she did. People like Stella have noses for energy that is not on them. She showed up in the lobby of my office on a Tuesday with a stroller and a soft smile. The receptionist called my desk. I came down, turned on my phone recorder, and stepped into the marble light. We should not fight, she said before I could speak. I was terrible. I was scared. I did not know what to do. I went to the clinic under your name because I panicked. I will fix it. But you have to help me. How? I asked. She pushed the stroller a little, a sway train to look maternal. They keep asking about the father, she said. They keep saying I need to list him on something. But he is complicated. You know. It would ruin everything. If you signed a statement saying you were the patient and that there was a mistake with the file, then I can clean it up without dragging anyone. Anyone meant Damien. Or it meant a different man entirely. In the whir of her words there was a tiny blank place. I set my finger on it. Who is the father? I asked. She did not blink. Damien is, she said at once. Then list him, I said. He cannot, she said, too quickly. Because of some legal stuff with his business. It is boring. It would be easier if you just said you were the one who went to the clinic and then changed your mind, and that the doctor got confused when he tried to return the baby. It is just paperwork. I will take care of the rest. I will take care of you. There it was again, the old script, polished and familiar. I took care of you. Like an owner. My answer was a slow breath. No. Her eyes went flat. You think you are better than me now, she said in a voice like a whisper and a knife. You think because you made friends with that lady across the hall and got a little raise that you can pretend you are something. I think I finally understand what I am, I said. And what I am not is your trash can. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. The stroller rolled an inch and bumped my shin. The phone in my pocket recorded everything. Even the small, ugly way she said the next line. You will regret this. I did not. I went upstairs and finished my shift. When I came down, security told me the woman had returned, crying, saying I had grabbed her, shaken her, and tried to take her child. They asked me to wait while they reviewed the lobby cameras. I waited. The footage showed exactly what had happened. Security wrote a note and printed a still for me to keep. I filed it with Ms. Dorsey and with Attorney Park. Every time Stella tried to set a trap, she fell into it herself. The clinic tried to wriggle free. Their lawyer sent a letter claiming that the intake file had been altered by an unknown party and that they were cooperating fully with the investigation. They attached no logs. They said their cameras had been down that week for maintenance. They said these things like prayers. Attorney Park sent a subpoena. The clinic said nothing at all after that. In the evenings I sat at my small table and sorted paper into folders. I labeled each one. Police. CPS. Clinic. Work. Parents. Stella. Damien. I printed screenshots. I wrote dates in the corners. It looked fussy. It was armor. Then one afternoon a nurse knocked on my door. She was tall and tired and wore a coat that had seen too many shifts. When I opened the door, she said, "Are you Lena Scott?" "Yes," I said. She looked down the hall and back. "May I talk to you?" she asked. "I will be quick." I let her in and poured her water. She stood with a glass in both hands and spoke like a person to a person, not like a witness to a wall. "I worked that night," she said. "At the clinic. I hate that place. I have been trying to leave. I did not like what they did to you. The doctor told me to put down your name because the mother insisted, and because he wanted a fake that would hold long enough to get the baby off the premises. He said it was to protect a wealthy client. He paid me cash to keep quiet. I kept the cash. I did not keep quiet. I made copies of the intake log and the bracelet sticker before he tore them up." She slid an envelope across my table. Inside was a photo of a torn bracelet label. It showed the date, the infant code, the sex, and the mother line. The mother line said Stella S. The father line said unknown. Under the label was a sticky note with a phone number and a name. It said Afton. Under that, a second number and a name. It said Cole Legal. I lifted my eyes. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Because I saw the baby at the follow-up check," the nurse said, and he smiled at me with his whole face, like a sunrise. "Because I have a son too. Because I want to be able to look at him and say I did one right thing. Keep my name out of it if you can. But do not let them bury this." She left before I could thank her properly. I sent scans to Attorney Park, who called me so fast I wondered if she had been sitting on the phone. "This is enough to force a hearing," she said. "We will request a court-ordered DNA test for paternity. It will either confirm Mr. Cole and box him in or reveal another father and blow up whatever arrangement they are trying to build. What if he refuses? I asked. Then we will let the refusal speak for itself, she said. Judges understand the language of refusal. We file the motion. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing 2 weeks out. I marked the date on my calendar in red ink and then went very still, as if noise might scare it away. The days leading up to the hearing felt like moving through glue. At work I pushed metrics lower and trained 2 new hires. At home I made meals I could eat cold. I walked every evening after dark because it helped me think without heat. I did not talk to my parents. They did not talk to me. That silence hurt and then, slowly, it did not. 2 nights before the hearing, Damien knocked on my door at 11. I did not open it. I spoke through the intercom. It is late, I said. You need to leave. We can make this go away, he said. His voice had been polished down to a calm that did not belong to human throats. Name your price. This is not about money, I said. Everything is about money, he said. You are wrong, I said. Some things are about sleep. You like sleep, he said. Understood. Here is the last offer. You sign a statement saying you lied because you were jealous of your sister. You post an apology. You delete the videos. In return, I will arrange for your parents to keep their apartment free and clear and for you to move to a better place with a moving stipend and 6 months of support. You will also receive a non-disclosure payment for your trouble, and if you keep your end of the bargain, I will consider adding you to a vendor list for occasional work. This is fair. You will take it. I leaned toward the mic. Good night, Mr. Cole, I said, and shut off the intercom. The next morning there was a smear of something across my door. It looked like chocolate. It smelled like fish. The camera showed a hand in a gray hoodie. Not Stella's. Not Damien's. Someone sent, not owned. I emailed the clip to Attorney Park and Ms. Dorsey over coffee and then went to work. The hearing morning was clear and thin. I put on the jacket I wore when I wanted to be braver than I felt and tied my hair back. Attorney Park met me on the steps with a file tabbed in a dozen places. She gave me one quick look and then nodded, as if she approved of something in my eyes. Inside, the courtroom was small and bright. The judge was a woman with a face that had no patience for theater. Stella sat at the petitioner table with a new lawyer and a silk scarf tied too tightly. Damien sat behind her, not at counsel, not at party, close enough to radiate ownership while staying just far enough to deny it. My parents slid into the back row and folded their hands the way people do in church when they are not sure which God is listening. The judge called the case. Attorney Park stated our request in simple words. We seek a court-ordered paternity test due to documented fraud at the clinic that handled the birth. We presented the intake copies, the nurse statement under seal, the videos, the letters. Stella's lawyer objected to everything and then objected to the air around everything. He said we were running a vendetta. He said the nurse was lying. He said the copy was fake. He said I had a history of mental instability and jealousy and regret. He did not say where that history came from. He said it like a man reading a grocery list. The judge listened, eyes on the paper, not on the noise. When he stopped, she asked precisely one question. If Mr. Cole is the father, why would a paternity test be a problem? Stella's lawyer smiled the way men smile at brick walls. There is no problem with paternity, he said smoothly. We simply object to harassment. Mr. Cole is a respected businessman with ongoing contracts. The optics of a forced test would be damaging. The judge lifted one eyebrow a fraction of a degree. Optics, she said, are not a legal argument. She turned to our table. Motion granted. The court orders paternity testing within 10 days. Parties will submit to sample collection at the appointed facility. Failure to appear will be treated as contempt. She paused, then added, for clarity, that means jail. The word did not echo. It landed. Damien's knuckles went white where his hands clasped. Stella nodded too quickly. My parents stared at their knees. We filed out into the hallway, where light fell through high windows and turned dust into glitter. Attorney Park exhaled once, a small victory. Then a man in a gray suit I had not seen before detached himself from a pillar and stepped into our path. Miss Scott, he said, and offered a card. His voice was crisp and friendly in the way a lock can be shiny. I represent the Cole Group. We would like to propose a private resolution that would render further legal action unnecessary. It would be better for everyone. Especially the child. I glanced at the card and did not take it. You had your chance to propose, I said. You proposed hush money. We declined. This is different, he said. We are prepared to acknowledge certain errors by the clinic. In exchange, we would like your cooperation in a corrected narrative that removes Mr. Cole from the paternity discussion and avoids reputational harm. You will be compensated. So the father is not Mr. Cole, I said. He blinked once, then recovered. I did not say that. You did, I said. With silence. He tucked the card back into his pocket. Think about it, he said, and glided away. Outside, on the wide steps, Stella caught up to me. Her scarf had shifted. Color had leaked from her face. For the first time in a long time, the performance faltered and the person underneath looked out. Do not do this, she said softly. Please. You will ruin him. Who? I asked. Damien. No, she said, and for a second she was just my sister again, terrified and young and choking on her own choices. Not Damien. The father. Then who is he? I asked. She opened her mouth. The courthouse doors swung. A policeman hurried down the steps toward us, hand to his radio, eyes scanning. He called a name. Stella froze like a small animal under a hawk. The officer stopped in front of her. Stella Scott, he said. There has been an incident at your residence. I need you to come with me. My mother reached for her. My father swayed. Attorney Park touched my sleeve with 2 fingers, a small anchor. What happened? Stella asked. Her voice was paper. The officer spoke carefully, the way people do when the ground is about to tilt. There was a welfare check. The child was transported to the hospital. He is stable, but he will be held for observation under protective custody until a hearing tomorrow morning. We will answer your questions at the station. A sound came out of Stella that I will hear at the edges of sleep as long as I live. She covered her mouth. The officer guided her down the steps. Damien followed, already on the phone, already making calls, already building a story. I stood there with the wind tugging at my jacket and felt the old timeline rear up, hungry and mean. In my other life, when disaster came, I threw myself under it so it would not crush anyone else. In this life, I had built a frame to hold a weight where it belonged. Even so, the news hit me like cold water. He is stable, the officer had said. He is stable. Attorney Park was already speaking. We will go to the hospital, she said. We will not engage with anyone outside of staff. We will offer our documentation to the attending social worker and to CPS. We will not say anything on camera. We will not sign anything. Do you understand? I nodded. My throat hurt. I swallowed the ache and let it sit behind my breastbone. On the way to the hospital, my phone buzzed with messages. Some were from neighbors, linking a shaky video of police cars outside my parents' building. Some were from numbers I did not know, calling me a monster or a hero, sometimes in the same sentence. One was from Ms. Dorsey. Headed to the hospital. Stay calm. Bring documents. In the emergency department, everything smelled like bleach and waiting. We gave our names to the desk and were shown to a small family room with gray chairs and a mural of clouds. I folded my hands and unfolded them and folded them again. A young doctor came in, followed by a woman with a clipboard who introduced herself as a social worker. The doctor spoke first. The child is stable, he said. He had a seizure at home. It may be related to fever. We are running labs. We will keep him overnight. Is he in pain? I asked before I could stop myself. The doctor glanced at the social worker, then at me. He is resting, he said. We are keeping him comfortable. The social worker asked for names. Attorney Park did the talking. She explained our role. She handed over the folder with tabs. The social worker read quickly, eyes narrowing in places, widening in others. When she finished, she said, "Thank you. I have some of this in the file already from Ms. Dorsey. This helps." She left to make calls. I stared at the cloud mural and tried not to imagine tiny hands reaching for air. I had chosen this distance. I had chosen it to save my life. It did not make the air easier to breathe. After an hour that felt like a day, Ms. Dorsey arrived with a stack of forms and a calm that made me want to sit down and cry. She thanked us for the documentation again. Then she said the line that changed the room. "The seizure is why we do not wait on court orders when we have reason to worry," she said. "We have a judge on standby. Given the evidence of manipulation around the clinic and the instability we have documented, we can place the child in temporary protective custody immediately. He will not be released to the mother tonight. He will not be released to Mr. Cole. The court will review in the morning. The paternity order stands. Stella's lawyer appeared outside the glass just then, flanked by Damien and a man in that same gray suit from the courthouse steps. They pressed the receptionist. They gestured. The receptionist shook her head and pointed to a sign that said clearly that only parents and legal guardians were permitted past that line. For once, rules were useful. Ms. Dorsey lowered her voice. "There is one more thing," she said. "The nurse who gave you the bracelet copy also contacted us directly this afternoon and provided a second piece of information. She identified a different man who visited the clinic after hours with the mother, paid in cash, and asked to see the baby before discharge. She wrote down his license plate. We ran it. The plate belongs to a car registered to an executive at the Cole Group. Not Damien. Someone else." "Who?" I asked. She told me the name. It landed with a weight I felt in my knees. It was not a celebrity. It was not a politician. It was worse. It was a man I had once seen at our parents' table laughing with my father about contracts and favors. It was a sponsor. It was a door my family had always knocked on when we needed help. It was a man who had hugged my mother at a neighborhood festival and called me the good daughter. The ground tilted. The mural clouds warped. I put my hand on the back of a chair and let the room right itself. Attorney Park's voice was steady. "We will let the court sort that," she said. "We do not speculate. We collect proof. We present it. We keep the child safe." Safe. The word was a small light. I fixed my eyes on it and would not let go. The social worker came back with wristbands for us to enter the pediatric unit as registered contacts for the investigation. Not family. Not guardians. Witnesses. That was enough. We followed her down a hallway where the lights were low and the machines blinked softly. At a window, she paused and nodded inside. He was sleeping. His face was open the way only babies' faces are, all breath and trust. The nurse had put a tiny knit cap on his head. Someone had tucked the blanket just so. He looked like the beginning of something. A shadow moved in the glass behind us. I turned and saw Damien across the hall with his lawyer in the gray suit, talking in hard whispers to a hospital administrator. Behind them, at the far end of the corridor, Stella stood alone, arms wrapped around herself, eyes on the small form in the crib. When she felt me looking, she did not glare. She did not posture. She only shook her head the smallest amount, a denial aimed at herself, not at me. Then she lifted her hands and pressed her palms to the glass like someone praying at a wall. I could feel the old reflex rise, the one that used to send me toward her to clean up whatever had spilled. I kept my feet still. I did not move. I let the ache exist and did not turn it into a task. The social worker touched my sleeve. "We will need you in the morning," she said. "Bring your documents and your comm. It is going to be loud." I nodded. Loud I could handle. Loud was only sound. As we walked back down the corridor, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. A single sentence. "If you open this door, you will not be able to close it." I stopped walking. The sender had not signed the text, but I knew who it was. Not Damien. The other name. The one that had made the room tilt. Attorney Park read over my shoulder. She did not say do not answer. She did not say answer. She only said the thing that had become our rule. Screenshot it. Save it. Then put your phone away. I did. When I slid the phone into my pocket, my fingers brushed the notebook I still carried there. The list inside had lines through most items now. Only one new line waited at the bottom, blank, wide, a space for whatever came next. In the parking lot the night air felt cleaner than it had in months. I stood with my head tipped up at the slice of sky between buildings and thought about the first time I had held him in my other life, how warm he had been, how quiet the world had gone for a heartbeat. I did not reach for that moment again. I let it be what it was. I let it go. Tomorrow the court would ask its questions. Tomorrow names would be said out loud, not in whispers. Tomorrow the frame I had built would be tested. Behind me, a siren opened somewhere and wound its way toward the hospital. I turned and watched the red light approach, a pulse cutting through the dark, a countdown I could not stop and would not run from. I did not know yet which truth would hurt the most. I only knew that there was no going back, not for me, Not for Stella, not for the man with the gold chain, not for the man whose name sat now in the middle of all of it like a loaded stone. The door I had refused to open for years had swung wide. I walked through it. The morning of the hearing arrived with gray clouds smeared across the sky, the kind that seemed to press low against the city as if trying to muffle the noise of what was about to unfold. I stood before the courthouse steps, a folder clutched tightly in my hands, every page inside like a blade sharpened on the grindstone of my past mistakes. Attorney Park walked beside me, calm as ever, her stride precise. She was not the kind of woman who wasted words. She had reminded me last night on the phone, do not get drawn into their theatrics. Do not let them bait you. You are here to present facts. Nothing more. Facts. The word tasted clean and hard in my mouth. Facts were all that had saved me in this life so far. Not love. Not loyalty. Facts. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with attention so thick it made the air heavy. Reporters filled the benches this time. Word had spread quickly about a wealthy businessman caught in a paternity dispute, about falsified records, about a child caught in the middle. Cameras had been barred from the hearing itself, but the flashes outside had already left my eyes stinging. Stella sat at the petitioner's table, dressed in soft pastel silk, hair curled in a way that screamed innocence. Beside her sat Damien Cole, his gold chain tucked beneath his shirt now, but no less gaudy in posture. His lawyer, the gray-suited man from before, shuffled papers with theatrical precision. And behind them, my parents. My mother's lips were pressed so tight they had nearly vanished. My father stared at the table as if looking anywhere else would break him. I took my place at the respondents' table. The judge swept into the room, robes trailing, expression cold. She had no patience for performance, which gave me hope. The proceedings began. Attorney Park rose first, her voice crisp. Your Honor, we present evidence of fraud committed at the clinic, corroborated by a whistleblower nurse and supported by physical documents and video testimony. We request that the court recognize the child is under protective custody until paternity is established through DNA testing. We further request that all parties refrain from attempts at private settlement until the matter is resolved in full view of the law. The judge nodded, flipping through the documents already on file. Then Damien's lawyer stood. He spoke with the oily confidence of a man who thought the world bent to his smile. He painted me as a bitter sister, jealous of Stella's success, fabricating conspiracies to humiliate her family. He claimed the nurse was lying for money. He claimed I had doctored the evidence. He claimed I was unstable, resentful, incapable of distinguishing truth from delusion. Every word was familiar. I had heard them all before in my last life, not in a courtroom but in whispers, in gossip, in the pointed looks of neighbors and the harsh judgments of family. Back then, I had crumbled under the weight of it. But not now. When it was my turn, I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice did not. Your Honor, I said, I am not here to win a child. I am here to refuse being buried by lies. In my last life, I accepted the role they gave me, caretaker, scapegoat, fool. This time, I will not. The evidence speaks for itself. I ask that the truth be allowed to stand without being smothered. The judge studied me for a long moment before nodding. Then she called for the nurse. The woman entered, still in her worn coat, hands clasped tightly. She gave her testimony clearly, the falsified records, the pressure from the doctor, the cash payments, the late-night visit by a man tied to the Cole group. She produced copies of intake logs and bracelet labels, her voice steady even as Stella trembled beside her lawyer. Finally, the judge turned to Stella. Ms. Scott, she said. You have been accused of falsifying records to conceal the identity of your child's father. Do you deny this? Stella's lips parted. Her eyes darted to Damien, then to the man in the gray suit. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Then, in a voice so thin it was nearly a whisper, she said, I did what I had to. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, the scratching of pens across paper. The judge raised her gavel once and silence fell. Then came the hammer blow. Your Honor, Attorney Park said, we request that the court order not only paternity testing for Mr. Cole but also subpoena the records for the second man identified by the nurse as having visited the clinic. We believe his involvement is critical to determining the truth. The judge's gaze flicked to Damien, whose jaw tightened, then to the gray-suited lawyer, whose face remained unreadable. So be it, the judge said. The subpoenas will be issued. Failure to comply will result in contempt. The gavel struck wood. The rest of the hearing blurred. Papers were signed. Dates were set. CPS maintained temporary custody of the child. Reporters swarmed the steps outside as we exited. Microphones shoved toward my face. Questions hurled like stones. Did you abandon the baby? Did you frame your sister as Damien the father? I said nothing. Silence was the only armor I had left. But Stella did not stay silent. She broke from Damien's side at the bottom of the courthouse steps, tears spilling as she turned to the cameras. I only wanted to protect my baby, she cried. I did what I thought was best. Please, do not punish me. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times before. But this time, the crowd did not clap. Some reporters nodded. Others frowned. Doubt had been planted, and doubt was all it would take to unravel her careful facade. Damien pulled her back, his expression carved from stone. His phone was already pressed to his ear, his other hand gripping her arm too tightly. For once, the neighbors watching did not whisper about me. They whispered about them. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, the quiet pressing against my chest. I thought of the baby lying in a hospital crib, watched over by nurses and social workers. I thought of the life I had once built around him, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. I thought of how he had turned from me, without hesitation, without regret. My heart ached. But it no longer bled. Because this time, I had not allowed myself to be used. This time, I had not handed over my life in exchange for scraps of approval. This time, I had chosen myself. The phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. You won today. But the war is not over. I stared at it, then placed the phone face down. Wars were for people who had something to lose. I had already lost everything once. And yet, here I was, alive, free, and stronger than I had ever been. Weeks passed. The subpoenas went through. DNA testing confirmed what everyone had already begun to suspect: Damien Cole was not the father. The true father's name, once whispered, now stood in black and white. An executive, a man with ties to my father, a man who had thought himself untouchable. The scandal was fire. It spread through headlines, through boardrooms, through every corner of society that had once turned a blind eye. Stella became a symbol of disgrace. Damien withdrew, his reputation scorched. My parents tried to disappear into silence, but silence does not shield when truth roars louder. As for the baby, the court placed him under protective custody while long-term arrangements were decided. Whether Stella would ever regain custody was uncertain. Whether the father would step forward was even less so. But one thing was clear: he was safe. Safer than he had been in either of my lives. I visited once, at the request of the social worker. He lay in his crib, eyes wide, small hands waving in the air. He looked at me the way babies do, without judgment, without memory, without the sharp edges of betrayal. For one heartbeat, the old ache surged again. I reached out, but stopped before my hand touched his. Goodbye, I whispered. And I meant it. I walked out of that hospital with my head high. The past life I had once carried like a chain was gone. The weight of sacrifice, of betrayal, of abandonment, it had all burned away in the fire of truth. This time, I had chosen differently. I had chosen myself. And in that choice, I was finally free.